Hello and welcome back to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about the new Tier 9 Russian Premium Heavy Tank, the Object 752. I'm going to talk equipment, field mods, and then I'm going to show you some gameplay, talk about this tank's strengths and weaknesses, and tell you how to best play this tank. Let's get into it. Let's talk equipment. The Object 752 is a pretty unusual tank, so it requires pretty unusual equipment. For your first choice, I recommend you take Turbo Hardening and V-Stabs. Turbo is going to get you into position a little bit quicker to put that early game clip out. Hardening, you can trade more. It's pretty simple, really. You're going to get tracked less. V-Stabs, improve the tank's gun handling. Then, for your second option, I recommend you run Hardening, V-Stabs, and Vents. This is going to be more for your kind of bigger maps where the vents are just going to be better and improve the overall gun handling of the tank. But there is an argument here that if you're not a vents enjoyer, you could drop the vents for improved aiming and just boost that aim time just a little bit more. So, let's talk field mods. For the Object 752, it's pretty generic for your kind of tier 9 heavy tanks. Firstly, you're going to want to be taking lightweight suspension. Secondly, parallax adjustment. Thirdly, periscope electric drive. And finally, take yourself power output tuning setup 1, which is the left hand one. Then, don't forget about your little booster slot you get for the field mods. For the Object 752, you're going to want to be taking yourself either the turbo or the firepower, which are your two choices. I recommend you take turbo. Pop your turbo in it if you're using that. If not, and you're not going to use that turbo, and you're using the first setup, for the equipment, I recommend you take the firepower one. Just put your V-Stabs in there. Give you a little bit of a boost, which is quite a nice boost to the gun handling. As you're going to see through the gameplay, it is one of the weaknesses of this tank. So, talking about gameplay, let's go into that now. I'm going to talk strengths and weaknesses, show you kind of how is best to play this tank, then give you an overall conclusion on my opinions on the tank. Let's get right into that. So, let's talk about the Object 752 for some gameplay. Today, we're going to be watching Geo Jackal playing the 752 on Redshire. Let's get right into it, really. So, when I was talking about the equipment of this tank and I said this tank's pretty unique, it kind of is. It's got a clip not too dissimilar than that of the IS-3A, but it doesn't have the kind of fancy reverse speed reload thing that the IS-3A has. It's a traditional auto reloader in the sense of you fire your clip, you have 3 shots in it, once you fire one, it doesn't reload. So you fire your full clip, then you reload the full time. So, let's talk the statistics around that. It leads to this tank having pretty poor DPM, which is not too dissimilar of other kind of auto-reloady, especially Russian, kind of tanks. It's not great. So, when this tank is fully tricked out, the maximum DPM you can get is 1900, so 1900, which just isn't really going to cut it nowadays in the kind of DPM meta we are in. But it's not horrendous. There are definitely worse tanks out there that have worse DPM, such as the Progetto, which is fighting, but it definitely does limit this tank. So, you have 3 shots, 390 alpha. In between each shot, you have an intra-clip reload of 3.2 seconds, which is a bit odd, but it's pretty okay. It's not too slow. It's not like 4 seconds of like the Char Future 4. It's not as speedy as the Barask, for example, but it's still pretty quick. And as you'll see, when you fire one, it gives you a chance to then fully reload your next shot, like fully aim your next shot, which is pretty nice. So, total clip potential, you have 1.170, so 1170 clip potential, and you deliver that in 6.4 seconds, which is pretty nice. I must say, it's a pretty nice kind of clip delivery. But once you fully clip out, once you fully trick it out, you're going to be reloading for about 30 seconds. So that's where the DPM is limited. You know, you clip out, you put that 1.1k out, but then you spend the next 30 seconds reloading. So, yeah. So as you've seen here already, Geo is taking a really nice position. He's using the hull down potential of this tank, which it very much has. And he's starting to put out a little bit of early game punish. You know, he's in a nice position here where he's not having to rely on his DPM. He can peek up, put 3 shots in, fall back off the ridge, reload a full clip, peek up, repeat. Which is kind of how you have to play this tank. But This tank has some pretty significant weaknesses beyond its DPM. Its DPM is not its weakness. It's its gun handling. This tank has atrocious gun handling. Dispersion of 0.37 is just oh so limiting, and that is with it fully tricked out. Yes, you can start to, you know, bring that dispersion down if you start to consider using vents. You can affect this tank's aim time, which is also really weak, 3.17 seconds aim time, which means you only just have enough intra-clip between your shots to fully aim your shot. So you have to be pretty much keeping your reticle stable to end up with a fully aimed shot upon the intra-clip reload being finished, which also affects this tank's DPM because it feels like you have to aim every shot longer than the intra-clip, which isn't great. But anyway, 0.37 dispersion and 3.17 seconds aim time just isn't it. It really does struggle at range. As you can see here, the amount of he's having to aim and the amount that the reticle just does not come in, it's still massive. It's like a rock. It's like a boulder. So anything apart from very close range, just don't rely on this tank's gun handling. It's very Russian, unfortunately, and you're not going to be hitting much. So do bear that in mind. It's not particularly slow, as you've seen. You know, it's able to rotate, but it's either not particularly quick. Top speed 41, and that's with a Bond Turbo. So, you know, if you do have the option to run a Bond Turbo and you are going to be trying to mark this tank or be playing it a lot, put a Bond Turbo on it. Bounty Turbo will still bring you up to about 40. So bear that in mind. But this tank does have a party trick. You know, it might seem a little bit all doom and gloom so far. No DPM, really bad gun handling. This tank has a party trick, and it's its armor. And I'll just pause it here so I can kind of show you what I mean. We're on some relatively flat ground here, so that'll help. So, armor-wise, this tank is special. As you'll see here, it has two cupolas, and it's got kind of like an interesting gun system. The gun and the cupolas are independent than the rest of the tank. So as you move the gun down, the cupolas come up, which means that no matter how much gun depression you're using on this tank, which it does, it has 8 degrees, your cupolas are always going to be visible, which is another limiting factor. But armor-wise, its cupolas are still relatively well armored. So, you know, if you're playing against tier 7s, some of them may struggle to pen it. 190mm at the thickest its cupolas are. And they're pretty much the entire thing is modelled. So if you hit pretty much anywhere apart from the very top of the viewports, you're going to be damaging. This tank is formidable hull down in terms of if it's hiding its cupolas well enough. Yeah, its turret's good. Anywhere on the turret, pretty much at its thinnest, is 340mm. So tier 10 mediums with heat are going to be struggling to pen that. So bear that in mind. So for example, the Centurion Action X, 330 heat, is going to be struggling to pen this, but then you have other tanks like the 121B or 360. You know, its turret armor works apart from its cupolas. Its hull armor is pretty interesting. As you can see, it's a pretty odd shape, pretty bulbous. It has a little bar up here. So pretty much, and just below this kind of thing here, there's like a little ovalish bar. That bar is 225mm. It varies across the bar, but in the center, about here, about 225. Then the rest of the upper hull, so this kind of whole area, frontally, this must say is frontally, is 250 to 290, 300mm. So if you've got a high heat pen, pretty much shoot anywhere on the hull and you pen. But if you're a tier 8 or a tier 9 tank and you've not got great pen, you are going to want to know this tank's weak spots, which is definitely its lower plate. Pretty much the entirety of its lower plate is 195mm, so a nice easy pen. Even when it's angled like this, you can still just kind of shoot this outer edge. As you can see, it's kind of angled pretty flat no matter where you are. So shoot here, 195. It has another party trick of Russian tanks. It has a V-shaped hull, so it's shaped in like this. But if you are playing this tank or you are playing against this tank, if it exposes its tracks to you like this, and you, for whatever reason, if it's side scraping but it over angles, don't bother trying to shoot it here. You're going to ricochet. It has a little shot catch If you shoot it through the frontal drive wheel, it's got a little shot catch in here, which is about 220 millimeters. So you do have to bear that in mind if you're playing this. If you're side scraping, you very much can. It's a V-shaped hull, like the IS-7. So bear that in mind, but don't overexpose and show your frontal drive wheel, because they will pen you, and that is bad, because they're also going to take your tracks off and cause damage. So let's kind of reflect upon what we've seen so far in this replay and what it kind of shows the tank can do. It's shown its strength of being able to sit on a ridgeline. Yes, it didn't really take any damage. It blocked some nice shots by sitting on the ridgeline. And it kind of highlighted the way you have to play this tank. It's very much a, I'm going to do 1.1k damage in 6.5 seconds, and then I'm going to go into hiding for the next 30. Kind of how you have to play this tank. You are not going to be wanting to, you know, take chancy shots in this tank. You don't have the DPM. You're going to be wanting to go for those more guaranteed shots. Take yourself into positions where you know you're going to be fighting close range, because if you can hide those cupolas well enough, which you can lift the gun up, which will lower the cupolas back into the turret, and that's a way you can kind of hide your cupolas. It's quite nice, but you're not going to want to be playing this tank at long range and expecting it to work. You're definitely going to want to be within 100 meters, 200 meters of your opponent. I found this tank quite formidable to play against on kind of city-based maps, somewhere where you're forced to be close to it, and it will peek out, it will do a lot of damage to you very quickly, and then it will fall back into a safe position. I found it to be quite annoying to play against, and from speaking to people, it's quite fun to play, especially on those kind of city-based maps. But you can see there the very, very bad gun handling. You know, it does manage to catch a shot into the CC's lower plate, but it took 2 out of the 3. So do bear that in mind. You're not going to want him to be playing this tank at long range. Bad dispersion, bad gun handling is not going to work for you. And as you'll see, the armor is pretty nice on this tank. And this is kind of the scenario you want to be in. Your opponent up in the face of you, they are going to have to shoot down on you, so you can gun block them if they've got heat, if they've got AEP, APCR. Just angle your armor constantly, and you are a relatively difficult tank to pen, especially for this poor little tier 7 here. But as you saw, it put out 1.2k in 6.5 seconds, and now is completely vulnerable for the next 30. So in this situation, I'd have liked to have seen the BZ press the tempo a little bit, and, you know, force the 7.52 to kind of, you know, bleed in for a bit more hit points. But people underestimate this tank and don't realize that this tank has that clip. You know, they think, oh, it's just a Russian heavy tank, and, you know, they'll take 390 damage and go, oh, I'll just peek it again, not realizing this tank has another 2 shots waiting, both 390. It's definitely caught a few people out. I've definitely seen it catch a few people out. It's pretty odd for a Russian to have a kind of traditional autoloader. We haven't got one in the tech tree, that's for sure. So maybe this is a sign of we're going to end up with a new Russian heavy line. That might be quite cool. Oh, another thing that I've not talked about is this tank's penetration. It's pretty weak. You know, standard-wise, 240. It's okay. He has AP APCR, which is kind of nice. 310, so 240 standard AP, and then gold 310 APCR is pretty nice. You know, you have decent shell velocity on that of 1.1k. You know, it's not incredible. It's not, you know, terrible. But it works. So what I'm kind of trying to say is I'm going to sum it up as this game is coming to an end. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to pause it. I'm going to let it play out so you can see the end of this game. Strengths of this tank. Clip potential is really nice. 1.1k in 6.5 seconds is really nice. Armor, definitely a plus. You can very much brawl in this tank, and it very much performs well as a brawler. Has quite a lot of gun depression for a Russian tank of 8 degrees. Not many Russian tanks have that. Has decent ammo in terms of, for Russian tanks, having APCR is kind of a little bit of a luxury, especially for the heavies. Works quite nicely. Weaknesses: lack of DPM. 1.9k just doesn't cut it nowadays. Really, really bad gun handling at anything but point blank range. So 0.37 dispersion and 3.17 seconds aim time just isn't it. Cupolas, which are pretty weak and are pretty visible if you are using this tank's gun depression. It has a shot catch when you're side scraping, so it's not completely invulnerable. And it's not got a lot of HP, which is why I recommend you run Bond HP on this tank. You know, standard, you're talking 1700. Run the Bond HP. You can pick it up to 2k, which is okay, but still not that incredible. So, in conclusion, this tank is good. It's pretty average. It's very much following the trend of the other Christmas box tanks. Not incredible. Has a couple of standout features, but in general, it's pretty average, and it's going to fit pretty generally into the matchmaker and into the current meta. It's not going to break the game. Would I go and break the bank to get this tank? Absolutely not. It's not going to be the new BZ from last year, the new BZ176. It's definitely not going to be that. It is just going to be a pretty comfy tank to play if you're playing it. If you're playing against it, mildly annoying, but it definitely has its weaknesses. So, let's wrap this video up and go into a little outro for you. So, hope you enjoyed this video, guys. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you found my channel through this video, don't forget to subscribe and turn that little notification bell on to get notified when I upload. I upload daily, whether that be for YouTube Shorts or daily advanced videos, and I try and get one of these kind of how to play it style videos out once a week to give you guys tips and get you better at the game. So, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!